Welcome to the program. We begin with breaking news from the occupied West Bank, where a major Israeli military offensive is underway. These are live pictures from Jenin, where Israeli forces have killed at least 5 Palestinians and injured more than 30 during their operation. The Israeli army has struck Jenin with at least 15 airstrikes. Another Palestinian has been killed in Ramallah. The refugee camp in Jenin is being targeted. It's home to more than 20,000 Palestinians and came under attack in a major Israeli raid only 2 weeks ago. 7 people were killed then and more than 100 injured in that operation. The Palestinian Authority called the latest operation a new war crime against defenceless people. Alan Fisher reports from Jenin in the occupied West Bank.
It began in the early hours of the morning, the biggest assault in the Jenin refugee camp since the Second Intifada, or uprising, back in 2002. Airstrikes into the heart of a heavily populated area in Jenin. Smoke could be seen rising from residential blocks. The Israeli army claims it's involved in an operation against what it describes as terrorist elements in the area. The Palestinian presidency says the assault is a new war against the Palestinian people.
Jenin constantly is attacked by Israelis now with warplanes and drones and missiles, and they've used almost every arsenal, every weapon in their arsenal, and the resistance simply keeps expanding.
Columns of Israeli military vehicles could be seen pushing into the Jenin camp, ripping up roads, leaving chaos in their wake. Drones spotted in the air. The assault coming just hours after the end of the Muslim Eid holiday brought protests onto the street. Just last month, an Israeli attack in the same area killed 6 people and led to days of unrest. The Israeli military says it's strengthening operations across the whole occupied West Bank and is preparing for possible missile strikes from inside Gaza and Lebanon. More than 100 Palestinians have been killed in Jenin since the beginning of 2022. The Israeli media described the area as a wasp's nest because militant groups have started working together, setting aside their differences, coming under one umbrella. Attack helicopters have been used in the most recent attacks in Jenin, the first time they've been seen in the West Bank in years. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, in the occupied West Bank.
And Imran Khan joins us live from West Jerusalem now. Imran, it's certainly a dynamic situation in Jenin. What more have we learned about these latest raids?
Well, the Israeli army have issued a statement. It says much as you'd expect them to say, but it does go on to say something very interesting towards the end. It was from the Israeli army chief spokesman, Daniel Hagari. He says, "We did not come to occupy the refugee camp. This is not an operation against the Palestinian Authority, but against terror groups," his words, in Jenin. Hagari branded the operation as a brigade-level raid, but didn't give it a name. Now, normally, an operation of this size gets its name. But this just goes to show you that this is far larger than we've ever seen in recent years before against a Jenin refugee camp, also taking place in Ramallah as well. Now, it's likely that this is a response to the far-right coalition members, people like Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, the National Security Minister, who are calling for a massive operation across the West Bank. It's likely that this operation, the size of this operation, is to try and appease those hard right members of the coalition. And it's worth mentioning at this point that the Israeli army, the generals, have counselled against that kind of operation, but clearly they are happy to do something of this nature, and it is taking place by land and by air. There's use of helicopter drones and helicopter gunships. We haven't seen helicopter gunships being used in the occupied West Bank since the Second Intifada. So it is a very large operation. Now, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has also convened a security consultation meeting that takes place at 10:45 in a few hours' time. It's likely that at that place At that point, they'll try and discuss what happens next. But all eyes now are on reaction, particularly from the Gaza Strip. The Israelis have set up a rocket defense system on the borders with the Gaza Strip, just in case there is any reaction from there. But we've been speaking to people within the Gaza Strip. Hamas have actually said that the Jenin armed men, the fighters there, are more than capable of defending themselves. So although this operation is going on right now, what happens next, what happens in the next 12, 24 hours is going to be crucial.
Give us a sense of what's led up to this point, Imran. These attacks have come amid escalating violence in the West Bank.
Well, these raids on Jenin take place on an almost nightly basis. They have been taking place over the last year, but this is much more of an escalation than we've seen before. What normally happens is the Israeli army go into Jenin refugee camp, they try and arrest people, they try and take part in what they call targeted killings on occasion, perhaps not in this case, but this is a much bigger escalation. And the reason for that is because the fighters within the Jenin refugee camp have all now come together. And this poses a problem for the Israelis. The Israelis say that this is a national security threat. However, there are dissenting voices within Israel who say that this just leads to further escalation, that it becomes tit for tat, that unless there's a negotiated agreement with the Palestinian Authority, that the Palestinian Authority come to an agreement with the gunmen, then this escalation will continue. And that's really what we're seeing right now. But those dissenting voices are few and far between. By almost an overwhelming majority, there is a desire to try and take out the fighters within Jenin refugee camp, and this is the kind of operation that we perhaps are going to see much more of.
All right, thanks so much for bringing us up to speed. We'll cross back to you throughout the day. Imran Khan in West Jerusalem. And earlier I spoke with Ahmed Tabassi, who is an artistic director at the Freedom Theatre in Jenin. He lives in the refugee camp there and told us the current Israeli operation feels different than previous raids this year.
Before 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, we hear a big sound, a big bomb sound inside the theatre. I live in front of the theatre, but the problem, the sniper is all around the Freedom Theatre and the buildings around the Freedom Theatre. The Freedom Theatre wasn't really a target, but, you know, we exist in the middle of the Jenin camp and in the entrance of Jenin camp, and that's what makes it very difficult. We cannot even open windows or check what is going on inside, outside. From the morning, the bulldozers have been destroying the streets, no electricity, no internet. The soldiers, the Israeli soldiers, shooting everywhere. They try to provoke everyone. Many injured people, civilians, I mean. And for sure, from last night until now, we didn't know the number of martyrs or the people who've been killed through this time. The way the Israeli army entered Jenin camp today, it really brought us back 20 years for the 2000 invasion. The way the Israeli now acting and doing in the Jenin camp, it's very clear they're not coming to do any security operation. They're coming to destroy the camp. They're coming to kill. They're coming to destroy. They're coming to hurt us and hurt our children, hurt our life. The problem is we are inside the houses. We don't know what is going on outside. We cannot do anything. Water pipes being cut. The cables, the electricity, everything being cut. So it's more than an invasion to Jenin camp.
Let's bring in Mustafa Barghouti, who is the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative, and he joins us from Ramallah. Thanks so much for being on the program, Mustafa. First of all, what's your reaction to the events of the past 11 or 12 hours?
Well, what we see is another act of war crime from the side of Israel and its military army. Let me remind you that Jenin refugee camp is a highly densely populated area of refugees who were displaced by Israel in 1948 in one of the worst acts of ethnic cleansing. These people also are under Israeli occupation since 56 years, like the rest of the West Bank. And now the Israeli army is using its whole military arsenal, including F-16 jet fighters, Apache helicopters that throw rockets at the camp, tanks, drones, also armored vehicles. A whole army is attacking civilian population in one of the most densely populated areas with refugees who were displaced by this same army, Israeli army. I think what we see here is a real war crime that should not be allowed. And it is conducted with the provocation of ministers in Israel who call themselves fascists, like Smotrich, who called himself a fascist homophobe, and Ben Gvir, who have been calling for a wider military operation on Palestinians. There is no justification for what's happening, no justification for the fact that Israel is shooting people, injuring them, killing them, and then preventing medical personnel and ambulances from reaching the injured people. This is a massacre in every dimension. And it is happening mainly because, I would say, because of the silence of the international community that has allowed Israel to conduct ethnic cleansing against Palestinians, the longest occupation in modern history, a system of apartheid, and now acts of killing. Since the beginning of this year, no less than 190 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli army, including 25 children, including a child who's only 2.5 years old. This is a war on Palestinian civilian population. And when Israel says it is defending itself, this is really a joke. The largest military army in the region claims that it has to defend itself from civilian population who are under their occupation.
Yes, I want to pick up on a few things that you've mentioned there. Firstly, Mustafa, we're talking about the far-right Israeli government. A peaceful resolution, given the makeup of the current Israeli government, is unlikely, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, not only this Israeli government, honestly speaking, Israel has blocked any possibility for negotiations since Netanyahu came to power in 1996. Let's remember that these extremists are the ones who killed and assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, the one who concluded Oslo Agreement with Palestinians. Netanyahu has been on a war track trying to kill any potential or possibility for peace. And since 2014, they would not even meet with Palestinian side. Israel is trying to consolidate a system not only of apartheid and occupation, but a gradual ethnic cleansing. And their very clearly declared goal by this government is to annex the West Bank, annex it completely. And Netanyahu said it only a few days ago. He said he will not only prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state, but he wants to extract from people's minds the whole idea of the possibility of two-state solution. So Palestinians are facing here a war, a series of atrocities from the Israeli side, and we have nothing to do but to defend ourselves with every possible form of resistance.
As you mentioned, this has been going on for decades now, and there's a new generation growing up under this occupation. How does that impact the conflict?
The younger generation have lost hope in the Palestinian leadership, have lost hope in the so-called peace process, because they've seen nothing but expansion of settlements and nothing but attacks on them and their families. And that's why the younger generation, of course, is very angry. And this younger generation now believes that Israel understands only the language of force, and that if we don't resist, we cannot even defend our lives. We cannot defend our children, we cannot defend our families. But let's put things in perspective. What we are talking here about are a few small number of young people who are trying to use very primitive arms sometimes. But in reality, what we see here is a civilian population of Palestinians who are under Israeli attack constantly, facing the largest army in the region and facing a fascist government. Only fascists in previous history would conduct a war on civilian population who are under their occupation. I really laughed when I heard what the Israeli spokesman said when he said that they are not intending to occupy Jenin. But they are occupying Jenin already since 1967. So they are trying to mislead the world with terrible propaganda. The reality here is that we are facing the worst kind of atrocity, the worst kind of occupation, and a true new war crime that is trying to repeat what happened in 2002 when Israel invaded Jenin camp, invaded the whole of the West Bank. And I am worried that they would repeat this same crime also in Nablus and in other areas.
Sure. And Mustafa, I just want to ask you one brief question before we let you go. The recent unrest has prompted global concern. We know that the United Nations Human Rights Chief condemning Israel's use of heavy weaponry, as you mentioned, but it seems to have made very little difference. What do you want from the international community?
Well, I will start from with what I want from Arab governments. I want the Arab governments to immediately boycott this Israeli fascist government. I know that words of condemnation and statements will not affect Netanyahu. He doesn't care about all of that. What we want also from the international community is really to start boycotting this government, this fascist government in Israel, and imposing sanctions. The world is using double standards. Look at Ukraine. They used 11,000 punitive acts, sanctions on Russia in 2 months. Here we are under occupation for 56 years. We've been subjected to ethnic cleansing for 75 years. Not a single sanction was used against Israel. Time has come to impose sanctions on Israel like the system of apartheid was treated in South Africa at one point of time. Without boycott, divestment, and sanction, Israel will not listen to reason, and they will continue these crimes till we reach a very dangerous point of explosion.
Really appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Thank you so much for your time, Mustafa Barghouti, the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative.
Thank you.